Hey there, welcome to Baking with Miss Meow. It's me, Miss Meow. Today we're going to be baking vanilla French macarons. I've been baking these for about 6 to 7 years, and within the last year or so I finally have gotten the hang of it. So while these pastries are not that difficult, they are very temperamental, and it takes a lot of technique to get it down and make them look pretty and taste right, and the whole 9 yards with the whole, you want the look you're going for with the macaron, is crunchy on the outside and kind of chewy on the inside, and it'll just be a delicious texture and flavor, and everything's really good. It's pretty easy, but again, temperamental. You just gotta keep working at it. First thing we have is the scale, which is really important. Macarons aren't necessarily difficult, but they're very temperamental. So when you have the scale, it measures the ingredients to the exact amount that they require. So we have almond flour, powdered sugar, egg whites, and regular granulated sugar. Also, cream of tartar. So each egg is about 30 grams. This took about 1.5 to 2 eggs. And they can either be straight from the fridge, super cold, or they call them day-old eggs, where you let them sit out until they get room temperature. As long as they're covered by saran wrap where it's airtight and you push it down on the eggs, it should be fine. I've let them sit out 2 days and they were totally fine. It doesn't really matter for the recipe if it's cold or room temperature. Okay, so now I'm gonna sift the ingredients, because if you can see in there's a bunch of chunks of the powdered sugar, and that doesn't do, the macarons don't like that. So you have to sift it all together so it's a nice mixture, nice and smooth. So I have my little hand sifter here, which is perfect for macarons. So we just, since it's not a big batch, I can just do this real quick. This recipe makes about 1 batch, which is about a dozen worth. I kind of take the little chunks, you can see, and I smooth it down with my spatula. And if there's about that much left, it's totally fine. It's not a big deal. I just usually dump those in the sink. And then I take my whisk and I mix it together again. Some people like to sift it together like 3 or 4 times, but I don't really have time for that, so I just want to do it once, then hand sift it, and then you can see it's a nice little mixture there, nice and smooth. There's no hard lumps of powdered sugar or almond flour, and then you kind of just set that aside until you're ready with the egg mixture. Okay, first thing you want to do is put in your egg whites, and you start them to usually maybe level 2, and you're going to do that for about 3 minutes. After about a minute, when it gets foamy, you put the cream of tartar in, and then when you can start seeing the whisk in the foam, like you can kind of see, that's when you put your sugar in. So you put it in, and then you set the timer for 3 minutes. This is what it looks like at about 3 minutes after you added the sugar. So you want to up the speed and add 3 more minutes. Okay, this is what it looks like 6 minutes after you've added the sugar. And you definitely want to up the speed more. So I'm gonna put it to about probably what would be a 7. Add 3 more minutes, and then you want to be sure you're watching it towards the end of the 3 minutes because you don't want it to get too stiff of a meringue. Okay, so you can see here that it's definitely not ready. You can tell by how thin it is. You see how it's kind of dripping out. What you're looking for is for it to be nice and stiff, and it's not going to fall off of the whisk. Yes, my lovely assistant Chloe over here is telling me how to make the meringue. Huh? Are you helping me? Yeah. Okay, so the whisk is going pretty fast, but you can kind of see that it looks like it's stiff. So let's see. Looks good on here. It might still need another minute. So I like to go like this, and then you see how it's kind of dipping down a little bit. It's kind of moving. That means it needs a little bit more time, maybe 45 seconds. So I'm gonna do that. Okay, so this should be perfect. Perfect stiff peaks, maybe. It's kind of droopy. Another test you can do, you can take the whole bowl. If I can get this on. There we go. Take the whole bowl and see. It looks pretty good. So obviously you don't want it to be loose because then it'll just go everywhere. Okay, so now I'm gonna take the meringue and the powdered sugar almond flour mix and put it in there. There we go. Now take your flat spatula, and this part is where you make the macaronage, where it's pretty tricky. Okay, so you're gonna just kind of start out. You don't ever mix it like you would with brownie batter. You kind of go around the edges and scoop it and push it down. So what you're trying to do basically is mix it together and make sure there's no air bubbles all at the same time. So I know this bowl has a shine to it, so it's kind of hard to see. Let me see if this will help. Maybe a little bit. So anyway, yeah, keep going like this. You can kind of push the mixture along the edges, but you basically keep going like this, push it down, kind of just move it around, play with it, as long as you're not mixing it, like stirring it. You don't want to stir it. You just kind of go like this, and then you can kind of see how it's kind of getting more stiff. So, but there's still loose flour and all that in there. So now what you're gonna do is push it. It's hard to do. Push along the edge. So what's easier for me is if I push and just keep going all the way around. So you smear it down until the whole bowl is covered, and then what you do, you kind of go like this, scrape it off. Scrape it all the way around until the mixture is down in the middle, and then you're gonna kind of keep doing that. You do it again. Scrape it along the edge. And you can see it's all pushed, and then you're gonna push it down. So you're basically making the macaronage all like ready to go, and you can kind of see it's becoming more liquidy, but you don't want to get it too liquidy. This is where they're very temperamental, because they have to be the perfect amount of no air bubbles, perfect amount of liquidy. They have to be able to move so you can squish them. You can take the cookies and make them into a circle and have it be a nice shape. So you can see right here how it's almost there, because you should be able to lift your thing up, your spatula, and have it do that but not have it fall apart. It should be in a one liquid motion. So you just kind of keep doing that. Probably won't, this will be the last time. So you just smooth it down. And I didn't make this recipe, I found it online. I just want to throw that out there. Okay, so now, let's see if I can do that. Okay, you can see how it's like this nice liquidy batter. And so that means it's time to put it in the piping cup. So I have my piping bag in this cup. It's easier for me to put the batter in there. I'm just gonna call it batter. It's macaronage. But so the piping tip I'm using is a number 12. It's a 1/2 inch circle, and that makes it really good for piping out the cookies. And they're not technically cookies, they're pastry. But everyone calls them cookies in the United States, but everywhere else they're pastries. It's kind of interesting to learn that United States calls it something completely different than everywhere else. So it should be pretty good. Let's see. Okay, so here it is. Piping bag, ready to be piped. Okay, so I have my cookie sheet lined with these circle papers. It kind of just like a guideline of where to put the circles of the macarons, and then how big they should be to fit really good and everything, because they should not spread much more than what you put down. And then I have these parchment papers that's I just use the Reynolds brand that's already pre-cut parchment paper. It makes it really easy and really convenient for me. So that way I don't have to worry about cutting it or making it perfect or anything. Now I am ready to pipe my macarons. Got my piping bag, everything's all ready. So you want to make sure what you do is you push it down and you kind of flip to the side. Push it down, flip, and you just go all the way around. And you should have enough for this whole pan. Sometimes you have a little bit extra, but it should be good. Oops, that's okay. I mean, this part is pretty easy. It's not, you don't have to be super perfect with it. It's just kind of staying in the circles if you want them to be pretty much the same size for like filling and looks. Okay, so now I did that. What I do is I take these little papers out, and then what you're gonna do, you're gonna rat the pan, basically hit it on the counter so it kind of gets the air bubbles out. And you just go like this, like 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And then you turn it around. 1, 2, 3. So now you're going to wait for 30 minutes, and then you know when they're ready to be put in the oven when you can touch them with your dry finger and you don't get the dough on there, the batter, macaronage, however you want to call it. But you can see there's some air bubbles here. So usually when you rat the pan, that gets all the air bubbles out, but I guess I need to hit it harder next time. But you can see they're all pretty much the same size. There might be a little bit of difference, but that's okay. You're just gonna be eating them anyway. Also, after you do this, you set your oven to preheat while you're waiting the 30 minutes for it the cookies to set. So for the vanilla buttercream filling, I have everything ready. I have the powdered sugar, I have the butter, and I have the vanilla, and I'll add the water after. So for the vanilla, I always make it myself. It's this nice brown color. It's just so much easier. You have the nice little real flecks of vanilla in there, which is nice. A nice little homemade touch. It's super easy to make it. And then I'm using water instead of milk because the California kitchen cottage food laws say you cannot use any kind of dairy. And so that's just the way I always have made it ever since I was making them to sell them. So honestly, you can't really tell a difference between the water and the milk. And I mean, I guess unless you have a super trained palate, which I don't. But yeah, so water is totally fine. First, you put in the butter. I kind of took it out straight from the fridge, so it's always kind of hard to do that because the butter is really cold and hard, so it takes a minute to get it going. So you can kind of turn it up a little. So after you beat the butter and you get it all ready, you put in the powdered sugar. And kind of whip it until it gets all mixed in there. Kind of gets messy sometimes. So then when it kind of looks crumbly, what you're going to do is you take the vanilla, you put it in. Then you kind of let it go around a bit. With the water. Put the water in. Then you'll probably have to go back and scoop up the powdered sugar because right now it's stuck on the bottom. So if you need to, you can always add more water if it's not, if it's too thick. You don't want it to be runny, but you definitely want it to be able to move around when you try to pipe it out in the piping bag. So if you do, let me show you the consistency here. If you do it like this, that's perfect, where it can be spread. It's not too thick, not too thin. It's not even gonna really come off. So you wanna make sure it's of a good frosting-like consistency. Okay, so it's been about 30 minutes. So I'm gonna test it and see if it's good to go. It's good to go. I kind of poked that one hard. So it didn't go on my finger at all. So I'm gonna put this on the top rack for 7 minutes. Flip the pan like this. Put it on the bottom rack for 6 more minutes, and then kind of feel how it is at that point. Okay, they've been done for about 13 minutes, and the way you can tell they're done is if kind of hot. Pick them up. You see how it's nice and clean, doesn't leave a lot of residue on the paper, and you can see that they have their little lip here. That's the whole beauty of macarons, where it's up a little, it has the little foot, is what it's actually called, not a lip. It's a macaron foot. And then if you take a spatula or a knife or something, take a bite, I don't know, cut it in half, and you should see, all right, I squished it a little bit. You should see here how there's no hollows on the top. It's all one thing. And that's how you know you didn't overmix or undermix and you baked it the correct amount of time. So usually you want to wait maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes so it kind of cools to lift them off. And you can just see how good that looks. It's pretty flat. Sometimes you can get them where there's just nothing like that. See, there's barely any and it's super flat. Oh man, that's beautiful. So then, fun part is to match up the cookies that are of similar size and shape. So I have them all partnered up and everything, and another way you can tell they're done is by, you can look at the bottom of the cookie and it's like this perfect light brown color, not too burnt looking. So basically you just want to get it to where it's just, so that way when you push the top on, and when you push the top on, you don't squish it down because it'll squish the bottom. You kind of do like this circle motion, and that way it's kind of different sizes, but it's supposed to be nice and even with the cookie. Pull this up. There we go. So one last thing about macarons is that they freeze really easily, and they keep for about 6 months in the freezer, but you gotta make sure it's an airtight container. Like if you do Tupperware, probably put saran wrap on top first and then put the Tupperware lid, because if you don't do that, it'll absorb the smells and tastes from the freezer. It just also will make it stale, so just make sure it's extra airtight, and then, or even a Ziploc bag might work pretty good. And yeah, so thank you so much for tuning in to my macaron tutorial, and stay tuned for more exciting things that are coming up on my channel. Thanks for watching.